We are talking women and people of color in horror. Get ready to blast off into the world of entertainment with Pop Culture Planet. Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of Pop Culture Planet. I'm your host, Kristen Maldonado, and each week we are joined by incredible experts for analytical pop culture discussions. This episode, I am thrilled to be joined by Sofia of Film Posers Podcast and Elliott of Movie Files. How you guys doing?
What's going on, everybody? How we doing?
Elliott, you are a returning guest. This is so exciting.
This is the sequel. We're talking about horror films and stuff tonight. This is the sequel, and this will be a sequel to remember. So yeah, very excited to be back.
Yes. I am so excited. So to kick things off, let's dive into you guys' entertainment origins. Sofia, if you want to start first of kind of how you got into content creation, podcasting, and where your love of pop culture comes from.
So first of all, my name is Sofia, and I'm a student. I'm a film student in Sagrado Corazon, and it all started because I wanted to enter in production. So in my production classes, I actually had a computer class, which one of the main tasks were like, oh, let's make a blog. So I actually started as blogging, and I have a blog called Unknown Reel, which I do film reviews. I also do commentary and analysis. After like a year later or so, with my friends and we started Film Posters, which is actually 4 boricuas that we just rant and rave about cinema. And we like to highlight about the Latinx community, and we also like to talk about our favorite films and such.
That's awesome. Now, do you have a favorite Latinx project that came out this year?
Yes, I kind of do. That was actually one of the things I wanted to talk about. So one of the films that I recently watched is actually called Vampires versus the Bronx.
Oh, awesome. So we'll definitely get into that more later. But yeah, that was a fun one.
It was.
Definitely. Now, Elliott, we've met you before, so we know a little bit about you. But could you tell us, for those who haven't met you yet, a little bit about your channel and what you're working on now?
Yeah, it's so I'm at Movie Files here on YouTube, and it's just any and everything revolving around the movie industry regarding like movie reviews, TV reviews, just kind of that fun stuff. And I talk about the big blockbuster stuff when there are big blockbusters to talk about, such as Tenet and things of that nature. But also, this year has given me the opportunity to cover like independent film festivals, like Fantasia Film Festival this year. So talking about the kind of small niche projects, especially genre projects like horror genre and things of that nature. But then having conversations on a weekly basis for shows like Lovecraft Country, The Boys, Ted Lasso, Apple TV Plus, Raised by Wolves. So I just kind of, I want to be that person on YouTube, very similar to what Kristen does. Having those people that, they don't think people are watching the same things that they are, but I want to be able to be, kind of that outlet. We can just talk about anything from horror, comedy, action, superheroes, and so on and so forth. And especially when it comes to, people of color and being in front of the camera, behind the camera, things of that nature. So a lot of fun reviews, live streams, and all that fun stuff here at Movie Files on YouTube. So yeah, check me out, guys.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned the film festivals. I've been covering some of them too. What has been one of your favorite films that you watched so far from the festivals?
Well, for Fantasia in particular, it's probably, again, going with the theme of horror, the Mortuary Collection. I really enjoyed that kind of anthology, which anthologies can be hit or miss because it's just like sometimes some of the stories are more prevalent and a little bit more put together than others. But I really had a good time with the Mortuary Collection. And there was a couple other like smaller comedies and just other films I saw, but that one definitely stood out for me for Fantasia.
Yeah, that one was a fun one. I love that the guy who was kind of the creepy mortician was the guy who's also the voice of Mr. Krabs in SpongeBob. Yep. That's hilarious. So good. So today's topic, we are really going to be diving into and exploring women and people of color in horror. And I really wanted to dive into this topic because I feel like this is one of a couple of spaces in film where people don't always represent women and people of color in the best light, and I think that there's a lot that we could do to shed light on the positives and also like improve a lot. I think sometimes people just don't think that we're into horror, you know, like there's these stereotypes of like what we're into, and for some reason people are not realizing horror, like everyone loves horror, like who doesn't love horror? There's so many different genres you can dive into, whether it's funny or, you know, anthologies or slashers, or, you know, there's so much. So I'd love to start off by talking about what are some of you guys' favorite horror projects of recent years. Elliott, you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, definitely one that comes to mind. I think he's becoming like the almost the Hitchcock of our time with Jordan Peele. You know, I think of 2016 now or 2017 Get Out, and then which is crazy that it's only been a year, but last year's Us, which seems like so long ago. But you know, I think Jordan Peele has really kind of put the, as you just mentioned, lack of people of color in horror films, having Lupita Nyong'o be in the lead of Us, having, you know, Daniel Kaluuya be in the lead of Get Out, and primarily, you know, Black cast members being in front and behind the camera. So I think he's definitely kind of the leading man in that sense of kind of bringing Black stories to the big screen, and they do incredibly well at the box office, which has led him to be executive producer of Twilight Zone, being an executive producer with J.J. Abrams and Misha Green's Lovecraft Country. So definitely Jordan Peele, whenever I see his name attached to a project, I get excited for it, and especially when it comes to him doing movies that he does himself. I just love Jordan Peele when he has to do with, like I said, Get Out and last year's Us. So he's definitely someone that comes to mind.
Yeah, I think that he's so versatile and so talented, and like I love that, you know, I think people really underestimated him when Get Out was first coming out. It's like, this guy, isn't he a comedian? Like, and to come out with this project that just, I think, changed the game and made such a huge name for him in the horror space. And all the projects you mentioned, I really love, and I think that they're all doing, you know, it's just, there's just something about being able to see these stories being told that it makes me so excited, you know. Lovecraft Country, that's one that I think everybody's been watching, and it's like you can't miss it, you know. Definitely. And I love that we're seeing that now, where like these projects are becoming can't miss projects, featuring, starring, you know, written by, directed by people of color. That's
100%. Yeah.
What about you, Anna?
So I really want to highlight some of the things that you said, how women, they are perceived that they can't write or direct horror. So I want to highlight some of the directors, such as Jennifer Kent with The Babadook, The Nightingale, or Kusama with Jennifer's Body, The Invitation. But there was also a movie recently that not many people talked about. It was like throughout the years. It was a movie called Cam, which is written by Amase. It was really like a great film. It also talks a lot about the sex industry, and they united with horror. It was a different take in it. The other film that I really kind of want to highlight, even though they still hasn't come out, which I'm really excited, is Niña Acosta's The Candyman.
Oh yeah.
I'm really excited for that. I really want to see her take on it. And just to highlight how women do like write horror. They do like to direct it. Like, you just gotta give her a space to be able to create these kind of stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you guys had checked out Lucky by Brea Grant. That was another like film festival project. She's been doing so many cool things in the horror space. She also did 12-Hour Shift. So she with her projects, I love that. Well, with Lucky in particular, you know, she's telling this story of a woman who's being basically attacked every night by this man who, no matter how many times she fights back, he just keeps coming back every night. And it kind of has like a little bit of like a supernatural vibe to it, but also the whole message is really about how like some like women in abusive situations have a hard time getting out of them, and they kind of turned it into a whole horror story based off of, and the whole idea is kind of like, well, you know, this is just what we have to deal with. This is how it is, and kind of being like, why is this how it is? And so I find it so interesting when we do get to dive into these stories by other people, you know, by women, by people of color, that we get to dive into also these more at times like analytical or like, social issues led stories where we're actually diving into something deeper, but showing it through the lens of horror. I always think that that's so fascinating. It also reminds me of Relic, which was also written and directed by a woman. Let me just double check the name right there. Natalie Erica James. And that was a really interesting story of like dealing with dementia and how that horror can like affect a whole family. And they really like physically, made that horror come to life, but you're tackling this deeper story.
Yeah, I really had a good time with 12-hour Shift. I thought that was a really fun kind of throwback 80s kind of horror film with a little bit of satirical nature to it. I really had a good time with that film. And she's definitely someone to keep an eye out for when it comes to the horror genre. So I'm a big fan of her work for sure.
Mm-hmm. Actually, something I found really interesting about 12-hour Shift, I got a chance to interview some of the cast, and the woman who played the cousin, the wild cousin.
What was her name? She was so funny. I gotta look it up right quick because she was just so funny to me.
Her name is Chloe Farnworth, but I forget what the name of her character was.
Regina or something like that.
Yes.
Regina, yeah.
She, we were talking about how it's so interesting that in a different story, her character is, this bubbly blonde, a little ditzy, probably would have been killed off. Right away. And instead, no spoilers, but, she's the opposite of killed off, and, I thought that was so refreshing to be able to see this story where, like, it's just not what you expect. It also brings to mind Buffy the Vampire Slayer, how that whole concept around Buffy was about, there's like this blonde cheerleader, the original, in other projects, she would have been killed off right away. But what if we switched that on its head and we had this character be badass and like actually fight off these, evil monsters? And I love seeing when we switch up stories like that.
100%.
Yeah. Speaking of that, let's dive into a couple more, I guess, maybe stereotypes that we see within horror, whether they're, positive or negative. I think one that also kind of, going off of that idea of Chloe Farnsworth character, slashers preferring blondes, you always see like these slashers going after like that very, bubbly, naive cheerleader type. And I feel like that's how actually a lot of the Scream movies start off, right? Like the pretty blonde girls getting killed.
Yeah.
But I got to say, I'm really excited for the new Scream that's coming out because they're casting a lot of Hispanic actresses or Latino actresses, and I'm like, oh wow, okay, this looks exciting to me. I feel like we don't usually see a lot of Latinos in this space, so
yeah. It's very true. And I hope too, and I have faith in the directors from Ready or Not that they're not just using these new, because a lot of them are kind of newer actors in the space or worked on small projects on TV. I hope they're not used as like the kills. I hope they're not like killing off half the cast and just leaving us with the originals coming back. I hope that the Latinx cast really kind of sticks through to the end and maybe have their own set of movies to move forward with. So hopefully, like I said, they're in good hands, and I feel like they're going to take this next set of Scream movies into the right direction. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was the Ready or Not directors. I loved Ready or Not. That was that
was so much fun. Yeah.
Flipping the final girl / damsel distress kind of ideas on its head.
Yep. Samara Weaving, she's great. She's one of my favorite up and comers. Speaking of like kind of Scream queens and kind of this new generation, I really look forward to what she does next. She seems to pick some really interesting projects, and she's a fantastic up and coming actress in my mind. So Samara Weaving is definitely someone I always keep an eye out for. Yeah.
Speaking of Scream queens, do you guys feel like there are any like, up and coming Scream queens that you're, keeping an eye out for, like Samara Weaving?
Yeah, going to the line with the blondes in the slasher films, the ones that kind of defeat the archetype of the dumb blonde. It has to be also the main character of Happy Death Day.
Oh yes, Tree, Jessica Roth. Yeah,
Jessica Roth. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
She definitely is trying to get away from the stereotypical dumb blonde, and she's like an up and coming Scream queen that people generally like it's a compelling character that people really like and they want to see more of her in films.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she's great. She just recently had that that TV show Utopia come out, which I feel like people kind of slept on a little bit, but yeah. She's definitely great.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah,
I think of Emma. Would you say Emma Roberts? Will you put her in that category? She was in Scream 4. She's in Scream Queens, the TV show, which I really love the first couple seasons of that, and particularly the first season. And then, of course, her relationship with Ryan Murphy with American Horror Story. So I would say Emma Roberts kind of plays against the grain, where she sometimes plays into the whole ditzy blonde character, but then at the same time, you see her in American Horror Story Covenant. You see her what she does in Scream Queens. So I think Emma Roberts has a pretty good space that she's carving out in the horror genre.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do consider I can consider as a new Scream Queen. Definitely.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who else.
I'm trying to think. Well, I can't think of is Victoria Portretti? Is that how you pronounce her name? With Haunting with Mike Flanagan. I think that they have a really good kind of relationship that they have going with the Haunting on Hill House and Blind Manor. I think she's someone that has really been doing a great job on TV, whether it be You season 2, and then of course, like I said, her as Nell in American Haunting on Hill House, and then this new season as the babysitter. I think she hasn't went to the big screen yet, but I think she's been doing a great job on television shows. So I think Victoria is someone that I would really look forward to in the horror genre.
Definitely, she's the one that's been standing out in the 2 seasons of Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are great ones. Yeah. What about I'm trying to think like. Who else? Yeah, those are.
I guess another TV person, but Sarah Paulson's always on top of my list. She's always whenever she's, whether it be Ratchet most recently, or again when she teams up with Ryan Murphy, and then she's been trying to get. I mean, she's been doing movies like 12 Years a Slave and stuff like that, but she has that movie coming out in November, Run. She was in 2 years ago with Bird Box. So I love Sarah Paulson. And I think, especially when she teams up with Ryan Murphy in American Horror Story, she's always like to stand out for me. So I love me some Sarah Paulson.
Yeah. Do you think that there's any people in projects now that could be like future Scream Queens? I'm thinking maybe like what is her name? Oh my gosh, why am I blanking? Letty from
I was just gonna say, Journey Smollett. Yeah, she is so. Oh man, especially from Lovecraft Country, she is so great. I mean, she's been doing it. She was like a little girl on television, and she's so great in Lovecraft Country. She's my favorite character, Letty. I love her. She is so fantastic. That's a good call. I really look forward to seeing her coming off of Birds of Prey and then off of Lovecraft. Her just be propelled to the big screen and really shining out. She is so great. I love Journey Smollett.
Yeah,
absolutely. She's super, super talented.
And also, too, just came to mind, Anna Taylor-Joy. I think she's a great up-and-coming actress in the horror realm, whether it be Robert Eggers' The Witch or M. Night Shyamalan's Split and Glass. I think she's been doing a really good job, too. So it's someone I love seeing when she's attached to projects.
And she's also going to do Last Night in Soho with Edgar Wright.
Yeah.
She's going to be a vampire.
I think so.
Yeah. So I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now let's see, what other stereotypes can we dive into? I mean, I think, a lot of times we see, minorities are one of the first to die in horror movies, which is just like, I think in general, a lot of American horror films, they just, they focus on like these white casts. And I've been trying to think like what horror movies or what like, even like fun Halloween movies don't feature just all white casts. And I had a really hard time. There were a couple that I thought of, but like, especially in like recent years, like I feel like when I go back to like watch some like fun horror Halloweenish movies, there's not a lot of diversity. So, like one, like you mentioned, Anna, that I thought was really fun was Vampires versus the Bronx. Cause I feel like that's not something we've seen before. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about what you loved about it.
Yeah, sure. So with Vampires versus the Bronx, I really liked how there was a lot of Latinidad representation that's the thing that we mostly do not see in horror films. And the other thing is how they just don't stereotype when they're talking Spanish. Because when they do talk Spanish, it's mostly like common words. But in the film, they just didn't use common words. They used phrases that we Puerto Ricans or like other Latinx people use in their daily life. And they also had a little bit of hints that we enjoyed, like a hint that us, the film folks, really enjoys how they use the adobo for like for repelling the vampires, or like a thing that really made me laugh is how they use la mesa de domino for as a shield. So it's like in some ways you can kind of like, hey, I feel identified with these characters. And
right.
Even though that, yeah, it is a family movie, it's not for everyone, because I feel that not many people can appreciate this movie because obviously they cannot. For example, it's just for kids mostly, or it's for like Latinos that could probably like feel represented in this film. So it's a movie that I and my group of friends really enjoyed. We literally cheered when we just saw a little Puerto Rican flag and like just behind the group of friends, but it was there. So it's a film that I really recommend watching.
100%.
Yeah, I had so much fun watching that film because, like you said, well, I just feel like sometimes, you know, when we do get Latino representation, it's very like, it's kind of a lot of the same Latino representation. Like, you know, we get to see a lot of like Mexican culture, a lot of like East LA. So like to see some Puerto Ricans and Dominicans in New York, I was like, that's my family. My family's from the Bronx. And like, you know, it just felt like, yeah, like you're seeing something that like feels really authentic. Like it didn't feel like, oh, we're just trying to say a couple words because like that's, you know, that's what, you know, people do. Or like, I loved how they even played on like some, you know, some things that you expect to happen in movies. And then they like twisted it. So like at the end when the guy thinks like, oh, is it time for me to like give you a kiss? And she's like, no. No, it's not. We're just friends, you know, and like little goofy things like that. The adobo, I was like, yes, like we got adobo in my house. I feel like I'm prepared for the vampire invasions.
For any vampire,
yeah, and also just how they you know, kind of told again, as we've said, a deeper story, but using a horror lens. You know, we're talking about gentrification, and you know, going through this like lens that, you know, horror is something that, you know, a fictional story that a lot of people can relate to, but then we got to see it in this perspective of like these Afro-Latino and like Latino kids that like, I've never seen that before. Like I've never seen a family-friendly horror movie that's like little Hispanic kids, you know, like how cool is that? So just made me feel like really nice, you know, I'm like, oh.
You couldn't have said it better, Chris. I mean, you hit the nail. You guys have both hit the nail on the head as far as just like how they were able to use that story, having fun. We've never seen that story being told in that lens and in that community, and also the importance of community and how important it is to, especially in horror films. We always talk, you know, when they're killing off people left and right, but when you have a community behind you, how many things you can defeat, how much you can, you know, bring your community, save the community as they did, you know, without spoiling it, but, you know, fighting for their, bodegas and fighting for their local shops, things of that nature. So I thought that film was so much fun. Kind of again, throwback to an 80s Lost Boys meets, you know, Fright Night, but in another, like I said, having the Latinx community, the Black community being a part of that adventure that we really don't see on film. So it was so much fun. And just I love also too, when you have a film being brought by minorities, you get some flavor, right? You get a little bit of extra love, whether it be the soundtrack, whether it be the score, just it has livelihood. It feels like it's touchable, it's tangible. These feels like real life characters. So I love the authenticity that the film brought as well. So it was such a fun film. I highly recommend everyone give Vampires versus the Bronx a watch if you guys get a chance.
Absolutely. I'm going to bring up a comment really quick from Adam Daly, who says that he loved that film so much, and his little Latina daughter, who's 6, now wants to kill vampires.
Nice.
And he loves seeing the community in the film, and he wants to see where they bring on werewolves. That would actually be
nice.
Cool.
Nice.
You know, I would love
Very
to see
cool.
like werewolves versus the Bronx.
Continue. Yeah, there you go. Build that universe out for sure.
That's a great idea. Somebody put the money to that. Give Adam Daly the money.
Give Adam in the script. Let him write the script, guys. He's writing it for you.
Yeah. Let's see what else. We also have a quick comment here that says from the Latinx book corner that says, absolutely love this. Film posters in the house.
Nice. So much love.
But yeah, that was a fun one. And you know, another project that I've really enjoyed, that I wish was a little bit more diverse, but I feel like the character that's in it, that's the standout is Latino, is What We Do in the Shadows, Guillermo. That show.
Yeah.
Dude, he deserved all the awards. Like, he should have been nominated for Emmys. His role was so fun because you're seeing this Latino guy who's like, you know, wants to become a vampire and then like goes on this whole journey that, you know, I mean, it's been out, right? Can I spoil?
Yeah, I mean, it's been many years since that film's come out. Yeah, I think it's enough time.
In the TV show that just came out.
Oh, that's yeah.
Yeah, well, basically, he wants to become a vampire, but it turns out he's actually a descendant from Van Helsing, and so he's really a vampire hunter. And so it was really fun to watch his story. And you know, I think Harvey Guillen, man, he got robbed at the Emmys this year. You know, he really got robbed.
I still gotta check that show out because I love the movie, but I haven't seen the show quite yet. But I hear so many people talking how great it is. I have to sit down and check it out.
Yeah, it's definitely fun. I think Guillermo's a standout in my opinion, but maybe it's unrelated to him.
If you definitely love the movie, you're gonna definitely love the TV show.
For sure, that's what everyone's been saying. I got to sit down and watch it. Definitely gotta check it out.
Mm-hmm. Now, are there any, you know, movies or TV shows that are horror or, you know, Halloweenish that you guys love that did feature people of color, because, you know, that were the focus? Because I thought of a couple of other ones that I don't know if you guys also maybe have on your lists.
Well, recently I've been watching Lovecraft Country.
Yes.
I love it. It has really great representation.
Yeah.
And the stories are amazing. I love how each episode tackles a different subgenre in horror. Mm-hmm. I gotta say that my favorite episode is the third one, because I absolutely love the scene where Letty was doing the seance.
Oh yeah.
It was definitely mind blowing. And can we talk about how the second episode felt like a season finale?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first two episodes I was like, wait, is this the whole season? Like, everything happened already. Nope, we got so much more.
Yeah.
Yeah, each episode really is like something mind-blowing, and it really craves like, okay, I want more, like what's gonna happen next, especially in the last episode. The last episode was definitely had a lot of social commentary. It also was scary, but I really like how Misha Green, a woman of color, she is like deep within the project and really has great representation and people of color. It also had Asian representation with the Korean character, and even has indigenous representation in an episode. So I really like how the show is going, like the road. So I want to know what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I mean, Lovecraft has been like the thing to watch on Sunday. Like, I do not want to miss the latest episode of Lovecraft Country. And like you said, Anna, the what Misha Green is doing is something just that we've really never seen on, especially with the backing of HBO, with the budget, with the visual effects, the performances, whether it be Jonathan Majors, Journey Smollett, you know, Courtney B. Vance, Omomi Moshaku. I mean, the cast has just been slaying it every single episode. And I don't want to get too much into, because I watched episode 9 earlier today, and it's just like, I just love what's going on with this show. And I don't know if we're going to season 2, but if we don't, I hope Misha Green continues to tell these type of stories, whether it be television or translates to film. But yeah, Lovecraft Country has been a thing that I just love the conversations that's being had. Love how this show, we were talking about the layers of, you know, Vampires versus the Bronx, the layers of just showing Black stories and the trauma that comes with those stories, and them reclaiming themselves, reclaiming their name, and, you know, setting up their own legacy. So I just love what Misha Green is doing with Lovecraft Country, and it's just been such a fun journey. Every single week is just like, you don't know what to expect next. So yeah.
Yeah. Really quick, I want to bring up a comment from James. He says, I thought Lovecraft was a romantic drama. Now I have to watch. So to give you a little bit of context, James, Lovecraft horror is horror that was, you know, basically a genre created by H.P. Lovecraft, who did a lot of like sci-fi horror, like crazy stuff. and you know, they kind of, you know, he was kind of like a notorious racist. So in doing Lovecraft Country, they were able to take his legacy and kind of be like, screw you, racist. Like, stories of
he's definitely turning over in his grave right now.
But you know, it's telling these stories of racism and how that's kind of like the real horror, but also dealing with like crazy sci-fi monsters and whatnot. And every episode, what I really love about this show actually is how every episode, even though they're telling this overarching story, it feels like a different genre. Like the first episode's like a road trip horror thing, and then the second episode is you're like meeting these crazy like
Freemason cult-like following.
People. The third one was like a haunted house. The fourth one was like a national treasure, like Indiana Jones vibe. The fifth one was like a Twilight Zone. Like they do, every episode felt like you're watching something completely different, but then the stories connect and you're just like, what is this? You know, like terrifying. And it's like the horrors of monsters and also the horrors of racism. So yeah, definitely a must watch. I definitely recommend it.
100%.
But yeah, what else we got here? Going back a little bit, did anybody watch Twitches? I feel like that was like a classic that was, you know, bringing, you know, women of color to the forefront as these like powerful witches. It was a Disney Channel original movie, not exactly horror, but still like Halloween. Tia and Tamara Mowry. You know, always good to see. Just like, you know, I feel like you never really see women of color as like, you know, as these powerful witches. We were kind of doing an episode on that last week about how like there's just something about like the idea of witches that everyone very much limits it. It's like always these like either a young beautiful white woman or a old decrepit white woman, you know. And so witches, they you know, Tia and Tamara are playing these girls that found out that they were, you know, these like twin witches. And I've heard that they wanted to do a Twitches 3 and tap Chloe and Halle, which I would be 100% down for.
Hey, we got Disney Plus. They can make it happen, right?
Yes. Oh, that would be iconic if like they each had a daughters that like carried on the legacy.
Make it happen, Disney.
Yeah. Oh, and really quick, going back to Lovecraft, the Latinx Book Corner says that she loves that with Lovecraft, a woman of color is telling the story because the book was written by a white man. So, you know, a lot of things changed for the better. So it was also a book if anyone hasn't checked that out.
Good point.
Yeah, I didn't grow up with witches, but I did grow up with the Haunted Mansion.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a quirky film, but obviously it's for children, and I really liked it. Okay. It's full of representation, obviously. Eddie Murphy, he actually is the one that contains like the humor in it, and he's the live of the movie per se. And I also really like how they tone down the horror for children, but at the same time it's such an introduction to them, because it does have its scary elements, but in a sense they can take it. Even though there's some like creepy zombie things going on.
The singing ghosts or like the little ghost heads.
Yeah, this shows you how crazy my childhood was. I've seen both of those films, but it was just like much when I was a lot older. But for me, like growing up with like Tales from the Hoods and Tales from the Crypt, especially like the Demon Knight and stuff like that, that was like what I was watching at a young age, which I shouldn't have been watching. And then
I remember watching Tales from the Hood.
Oh yeah. That was like back in the day. That used to creep me out, especially the story with the slave master and the little things coming back to life. But you know, that was something I grew up with, and then growing up, seeing Tony Todd being the first kind of like iconic black slasher in the genre, and seeing him with Candyman. So that was something, you know, back in 1992. growing up with that, being from Chicago, that was like an urban legend with Candyman. You don't want to say it in the mirror 5 times. So, that was something I grew up with as well. And, going back to all the way to 1968 with George Romero, with having the first kind of black Dwayne Jones playing a lead African-American in a horror film and kind of taking the lead and taking, the reins by his hand. So that was something all the way back in the 60s that George Romero brought to the light. It's having a black man leading a zombie film. So definitely some people to pay some props to.
Absolutely. I don't think I know some of those ones, so I'm definitely going to have to add them to my list after this.
Definitely.
Let's see. We have we have a couple of comments of some suggestions.
Yeah.
Let's see. XVN Richport says, I remember as a kid there was a PBS show called Ghostwriter that I think was the first time I can remember a cast with mostly minorities. Did you guys watch that?
I remember that.
No.
I wasn't dedicated to it. I was very familiar with it. And actually, Apple TV Plus, they revamped it. And I know they have like 2 seasons of it. And they did that in Amazing Stories. That was back in the day with Steven Spielberg. So, yeah, I know Apple kind of have revised those shows for a newer audience. So, yeah, Ghostwriters was something back in the day I remember as a kid for sure.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm curious, what do you guys think makes makes good representation for women and people of color in horror films, and what makes bad representation? I don't know if you want to, talk about kind of what goes into when you feel like they did a good job and when you feel like they failed us.
Well, again, going back to what I was talking about earlier with Jordan Peele, for example, and particularly like Us, showing Lupita Nyong'o and Wilson Duke as a black family going on vacation and having just kind of, a good, and not the father wasn't missing, it wasn't a single mom growing up, raising these 2 kids. It was a family. And that was so like refreshing to see on the screen, and also not being killed off, as you had mentioned earlier, within the first 5 minutes of the film. It was their movie to tell. So I think, again, when you have people of color, women representing, women writing for women, or blacks or Latinx writing for their culture, I think you get that, them making it, number one, making it in the movie, but also having like nuances in the performances and talking about social commentary and things of that nature. So I think, again, Jordan Peele to me seems to be that person right now that really wants to tell important stories and telling stories with, black creators in front of the camera, behind the camera. So I think Jordan Peele has really been knocking out in the park lately. And then you talked earlier about Jennifer Kent with The Babadook and The Nightingale. I think that she tells stories of showing, women what they go through of, I think of The Babadook, her and her losing her husband and having to be a single mom and how that comes of it, and telling that story, but also the brutality of The Nightingale and how she kind of tells that story of women back in the day, how they were just being used and for their body's purposes and not being able to have a voice. So I think that Jennifer Kent is another person that tells stories of women and has the authenticity of just true, raw, honest, grit type of film. So Jennifer Kent, Jordan Peele come to mind as some people that definitely kind of lead that conversation.
Absolutely. Those are great examples.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are mentioning here, when you get an authentic story, when you when you have an authentic story, which I think you get when you have people, I feel like we talk about this a lot on the show, but when you have people of those backgrounds being able to get the opportunity to stories, I think with Vampires versus the Bronx, it felt like a more authentic story. And then you have more fun with it because you're like, yeah, that's exactly what I would do. That's so funny. You're like, oh, we would do that. We have those at home, And, I guess not every story relates to everyone, but I think every story is a human story. So, everybody can relate to something in it. And I think, Anna, if you want to comment also on, we were talking about what we think makes good versus bad kind of representation for women and people of color in horror.
Okay, sorry. First of all, I'm just going to say sorry that my internet connection was kind of iffy.
No worries.
Okay, so I feel that when it comes to like a bad representation, it always has to be that they play the stereotype.
Yeah.
And when they play a stereotype, it's just like leaves a sour taste in your mouth. Like, because we want to feel represented. So when we see something that it's clearly not it, you're like, no, that ain't it. No. But even though, like, in good representations, when we see just a little, like a small bit of representation, we're content with it in a sense. Like I said, when we were watching Vampires versus the Bronx, we just seeing like the small Puerto Rican flag, it was just like, oh my God, this is it. Or when getting out of the horror subject, when they throw out the picture of Spider-Man with Miles Morales with the Puerto Rican flag, like behind him, everybody, like us in my community, we were like, oh my God, like, look, it's us. So in a sense, when it comes to stereotypes, please do not like, oh my, how should I say this? Do not use como que like basic words or try to play like physically something that it looks bad in a sense like, oh, you're gonna making like fun of the social, physical social like stuff from the people. Because for example, here in Puerto Rico, they like to tend to make fun in the comedy. They like to make people fun of the lower income, and they do it mostly like in physical comedy. So that's something that is bad representation in film in general, and also in horror, that they tend to kill out the minorities in it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, you see even in Vampires versus the Bronx, the vampires say, well, we're killing people that nobody's going to care about, you know, and making it seem like these people in this community are, you know, less than because of, you know, where they live and the color of their skin and maybe like different socioeconomic statuses and things like that. But I think that they were doing it in a way that like worked because we're trying to show that these people are terrible and we as our community are going to come together and fight these vampires. But yeah, I do think that a lot of times, like, you know, Latinos are portrayed as like, you know, the maids or like people that are, you know, dealing drugs and different things like that. When you look at, it's so interesting because when you look at those communities, actually, those, you know, people could be doing a lot of different things. Maybe they're doing those things. There are also people that are doctors or scientists or teachers. And, you know, it's like once you see a certain thing in a film, like, you know, that's kind of sometimes what people take away from it and think that's what people are like. And it's like, well, actually, there's a whole range of jobs that they could have, not just these things that you like assume that they're lower class or something like that. So, yeah, definitely agree that like they could definitely do more to show a wider range of the type of people that are in different projects, like horror. And like you mentioned, Elliott, you know, seeing a family in us, like, how crazy is it that feels refreshing to see a family? And like, I'm sure you see Black families all around. You know, we all see Black families.
100%.
Seeing on the screen is like, wow, thank you for representing us.
And I mean, they go on they go on vacation to their summer house. You know, Winston Duke's character is like the corny dad. He's telling dad jokes throughout the film, right? So it's just like we all, you know, we come from different backgrounds, but we all can relate to just, you know, family stuff that we go through, and there's always something to connect to. So I love when again, playing against the grain or playing against stereotypes, and not just because a lot of times when you do see a lot of those classic films that I grew up on, whether it be in the 80s or the 70s, whether it be Halloween, Michael Myers, you know, Jason, Freddy, you know, back then it was just like, oh, we'll put a Black person in or a Latin person in. We'll just use them for the kills, or just stereotype, you know, the Black person's the basketball player, or, you know, they don't have a dad in their life, or they're like you guys said, they're selling drugs. It's just like, come on, guys. It's just like, we have a lot more stories to tell. We do the same things you do. We can have, you know, a Black principal, or, you know, a head of a cheerleader is a Latinx character. I mean, it's so much to tell. And I think that's where Hollywood now is starting to realize that there are more stories to tell. There are more creators to tell these stories. And hopefully, again, with Amisha Green, a Jordan Peele, you know, someone like Jennifer Kent, and so on and so forth, are telling these stories. Lupita Nyong'o are telling these stories that, you know, show us being represented on the screen, man.
Yeah, and I often feel like that the minorities become the secondary character and they're like not fully developed, or their characters are mostly like racial stereotyping when it comes to like, oh, it is the shaman or the medicine man, the one that they go to for like a spiritual guide in a sense. So it's like racial stereotyping.
Yeah, that's called. I think that's called something like having mystical people of color that like they you need them to help you, and then they usually end up getting killed off or becoming like a martyr or something, and never have like they're used more for like exposition, but not really to have a role, which is always so frustrating. And also what you said also just brought to mind, like a lot of times I feel like they'll use people of color as like the best friend who is supporting the lead character, but never is developed and has their own story, which is also frustrating to see because it's like we don't just live to serve the main character. Our main character in our own stories, but
or by the end of it, they're like just a comedic event that they just break the fourth wall and say, "Hey, I think I'm gonna die next," or like something like that. It becomes a comedy at the end.
Got a great comment here from Adam Daly and Latinx Book Corner talking about Lupita Nyong'o in the zombie comedy Little Monsters last year, which that was a fun one. I don't know if you guys checked it out. Yeah, that was definitely a great one. We got to see her being a teacher, kicking butt, saving these kids, and she like never let go of her like positive attitude.
Right. Yeah, Lupita, she's a national treasure. She can't do any wrong in my eyes. She is fantastic, and she's so versatile, right? I love Lupita Nyong'o, and I hope that she continues to dip her feet in the horror realm because she's so great. She has that look too. It's like there's certain actresses, like I think of her in the last like 5 years, whether it be Toni Collette in Hereditary, Lupita Nyong'o in Us, more recently with Invisible Man with Elizabeth Moss, or Emily Blunt in Quiet Place. There are just certain actresses that just have that presence, and you just feel their pain, you feel their energy, you feel them wanting to defeat whatever is in front of them. So I love Lupita Nyong'o.
Yeah, and I think these women that you mentioned all have really great, like, kind of different roles than you necessarily see in horror. Like a lot of times women are the damsels in distress or, the final girl. And a lot of these women are, really fighting. But it doesn't feel like a typical final girl like story. It feels like they're like, real women fighting for their lives or fighting for their families and the people around them. And it's always really great to see because, we're fighters.
Exactly. I mean, I think of going back to my love of the 80s, in the 70s, you think of a Ripley, right, from the first Aliens. She was a badass and was the last one to fight off the xenomorphs. Or, Sarah Connor, in the first Terminator, which is a horror thriller versus the second one being a sci-fi action film. But Sarah Connor, man, she was no one to mess with, man. She took on Arnold. So I think of those icons, and then even today, like I said, I think the way we perceive scream queens, because we don't really get slashers like we used to anymore, or get kind of like that final girl type of vibe, unless you ready or not, or things like that. But they're kind of reinventing what a final girl can do in cinema, and I kind of like, again, whether it be those incredible actresses that I just mentioned, and even throwing in Florence Pugh into the mix in Midsummer, her performance there, and her kind of being the ultimate final girl per se. So I love how they're kind of reinventing that stereotype of a final girl.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I was gonna say, taking back the one that shapes and molds the final girl. I feel that also one important character that did that shaped the final girl concept and the stereotype. I think it's Sydney from Scream.
Oh yeah, Sydney Prescott and Naomi Campbell.
She was supposed to be the film obviously tackles about the stereotypes in slasher films, and I like how in that specific scene all of the friends are like, hey, this is the horror tropes, and he was like, no, virgins die first. But at the same time, we see Sydney losing her virginity, and by the end of it, she still tackles Ghostface, and at the end she's alive, obviously, throughout the period of the other film. So I feel like she's an important final girl that molded the archetype of the final girl that, hey, it's not supposed to be virgins too. It's not about sexuality. It's more like fighting and empowering women in a sense.
100%.
Yeah, because that is definitely a trope within horror, virgins never die or death by sex, like it's a comment from Adam Daly. Sydney was the breaker of the rules.
I love to go back what Anna was saying. It was Wes Craven that did Scream, and how he was able to reinvent it, because we know what he did with Wes Craven's Nightmare on Elm Street, with her name slipping my mind right now, Nancy. I think her name was Nancy in the Wes Craven's Nightmare. So him being able to reinvent another version, this kind of meta version, as we know from Scream, with Sidney Prescott, and again, just kind of passing torch, whether it be my favorite final girl or Scream Queen is Jamie Lee Curtis, as in the Halloween franchise, and seeing her, Laurie Strode, and then from there to seeing what we get with Sydney in the 90s. So, and I'm so excited to see Neve Campbell back in Scream 5 and seeing what she has to do in that role. But it definitely a lot of props to Sidney Prescott in the Scream franchise.
Yeah, I'd love to ask you. You mentioned like how kind of like the final girl is evolving. So how do you feel it's evolved from its inception to now? Do you think that maybe they'll do like a different version of a final girl in this new Scream?
That's a great question. I mean, again, she's, Sidney Prescott, she's a woman now. I don't know if she's going to have kids in this new iteration, which again, going off of just kind of, I'm thinking of Emily Blunt and Quiet Place, how she was the mother bear. You did not want to mess with, Emily Blunt and her kids, and seeing her, defend her kids. So I think Sydney is going to be kind of this, she's fought Ghostface 4 times now, and this will be the 5th time. And it'll be really interesting to see if she has some kids that she's going to have to, if her kid's going to be in high school, and she's going to have to be like kind of teaching them the ropes, like we saw Laurie Strode did in Halloween 2018, with her teaching her daughter and her granddaughter how to defend for themselves and fight against Michael Myers. So I think Sydney's going to be a badass in this new one, man. I don't think it is going to be, Ghostface isn't going to be, calling her on the phone and getting her off her key. I think she's going to be kind of the Yoda of the group. She's going to be a badass. So I'm really looking forward to seeing her back in that role.
I feel like after a while, you're just kind of like, I'm done. Like, you're right? This time.
Yeah, I can't wait to see her back in that role, man, because she's so iconic.
Yeah. This has been great. Do you guys have any final thoughts, final thoughts on women and people of color in horror that we haven't gotten to tackle yet?
I think when they used the body of women when they embodied the bodies of women in a monster way.
Yeah.
Because I feel that they like to tackle a lot of themes and symbolism when it comes to womanhood, or the difference between sex and such like that, and it falls more in the woman body. So I feel that there's a lot of characters that they kind of do that. One of them is Carrie. Because if we see the movie starts up with her having her period and people making fun of her, and throughout the film we see her progress with her telekinesis, but at the same time it's her emotions, so like that. So I also feel that it's kind of symbolic in a way, because they tackle like, oh, maybe she's a monster, stuff like that, but she's not a monster. She's like tackling womanhood in a sense. And I feel that they tend to do that a lot in films. The other film, correct me if I'm wrong, it's called Teeth, that also tackle the purity and consent in a way. And then we have other positive films in a sense, being a little masochist here, but it's called The Love Witch.
I haven't heard that one either.
Okay, so where the main character is a woman that she's a witch, but she uses her body to like seduce men, but at the same time she wants to feel empowered. She wants to like have revenge at the same time. So it's a tackle in the final girls in the sense that they are the monsters, but sometimes it could be empowering and sometimes it's the other way around.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I feel like they use that a lot, like puberty and becoming a woman and like periods and stuff as in a lot of different kind of like horror-esque ways, like with witches, like a lot of times they use that's how they like come into their magic. It's like you're you turn a certain age and now you like become a woman / you come into your magic and you're a witch. Or like you said, kind of like demonizing with Carrie, like demonizing this girl who's like coming into herself and coming into her womanhood and then turning that into a negative thing. And it kind of makes it like, in a way, it can make those things seem scary. Like, oh no, maybe I don't want to, get my period or something. And it's like you become this monstrous creature, and it's definitely, I think, problematic to show these like, these things that are basically making it so that like when you grow up and become a woman, you become either this monster or you become this thing to be afraid of, or as you said, kind of the opposite of what you said. Like you see a lot of these like like the death by sex trope in horror, where it kind of just like makes these things seem like terrifying, and it's like demonizing these things that are supposed to be natural, and yeah. Definitely gives you a lot to think about,
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, Carrie is like right on the head. I mean, literally, they poured a bucket of blood on her at the end of the film just to kind of really hit that on the head as far as womanhood. So, yeah, I think it's something that, unfortunately back in the earlier days, and we see it every now and then in modern horror films, but definitely back in the day, that was just like, virgin's blood, or like you mentioned Sabrina, or, we turn a certain age, when she turns 16, she is, Satan's daughter, and she has to take on, especially in a TV show, she has to become the queen of hell and all that stuff. So it is very interesting how they use that kind of that allegory of kind of womanhood, and it's like the end of the world when a woman becomes a woman now and she has to embrace herself, that it's a bad thing. And it's just like, what is going on, and why are men telling these stories of a coming of age of a woman in her own body and sexuality? I think of a film more recently in 2018, Luca Guadagnino's Suspiria, and how they handled body horror, and kind of how women, the witches of that cult, kind of took command and kind of took the lead in, of a sense, and what Luca did with that story. So I thought that was really interesting and kind of flipping that on its head. So yeah, it's crazy how back in the day people just let that stuff slide, man. Of just
it's like you couldn't do that now.
No, sir.
But the body horror that you mentioned also made me think of that the Mortuary Collection. That was a crazy body horror moment, and not one that I think we've really, at least not one that I've seen before, with Jacob Elordi.
Jacob Elordi, with the
given birth.
Stable, yeah.
You can imagine. It was intense, but I think that, I've never seen something like that before. So that was definitely kind of like a swap on that idea for women. And really, honestly, it really did feel like a gender swap of a situation that we probably have seen in horror, where like this woman was kind of the one that's like, kind of coming into her own empowerment and not caring, about this guy, kind of being I don't even know what the word is for it, but just like, being like the stud, if you will.
Yeah, he would use women as like trophies, and like even with women was like a way to get more respect in his fraternity. And she had her own agendas, and took the whole one night stand into another perspective, no less. But yeah, that was a very interesting story, no doubt.
Yeah. So back to our final thoughts. Any final thoughts, Elliott?
Yeah, I mean, horror has been, again, I was watching some stuff that I shouldn't have been watching when I was a young kid, but it's definitely kind of shaped my mind, and just seeing the different perspective of cinema, and how, these horror stories can be used to tell stories of humanity, and the ugly nature of humankind, and how people could be selfish and slashers, putting themselves before others, and vice versa. But versus like a film like we just talked about with Vampires versus the Bronx, when you come together in a community sense, how much you can, overcome evil and things of that nature. So I've always been a fan of horror, whether it be slashers. The older I've gotten, I guess this would be a great question for the panel. Is like, what kind of horror do you guys speak to the most? Do you like the body horror, slashers? More comedy horror? Do you like the torture horror? Like, what kind of horror just speaks to you guys more? For me personally, it's more of the psychological kind of demonic nature. The older I've gotten, a lot of like those stuff is like really kind of hit me, like the ghost and the cults and that stuff. Just I don't know why it speaks to me more. Versus when I was younger, it was more of the slashers, but. I just love the different conversations that we had in horror in the different directions you guys, that we mentioned with the subject matter of gentrification and how they were able to put a spin on that and seeing some other social commentary, what Jordan Peele does in his film and having that conversation being in the lens of a horror genre. So I just love what horror has to say. And when done right, you get some of the best stories.
Yeah, I love psychological horror as well. Like when you're really, you have to think and you have to connect things. And I love when we talk about, like social issues, like some of the projects we mentioned, like Relic and Us and Get Out. But I also love like, a little bit of a campy, like fun. So like the Bronx, Vampires versus the Bronx, like that was one that, it's just, it's just fun. Sometimes you just want to laugh a little bit, but I really love when they can kind of do a little bit of all of that, when it's a little bit funny, scary, makes you think. I mean, like Haunting of Hill House is probably like, a really great example of, that kind of like, I'm shook, and I love that kind of stuff. What about you, Anna?
I think this my take is like let women do horror, because one of the greatest stories have always come out of like women, like please let her have opportunities to write and direct more horror movies and more films. If the movies that we have come to love, like for example, American Psycho, as it was written by a woman, and we have The Babadook, and we have The Invitation. So we need more the opportunities for them to express the social commentaries that they want to do because they want to do through horror and such. So that is honestly my take on all of this. Representation in the POC.
Yeah, definitely. Now, do you guys have any horror projects coming up that you're like really anticipating? There's a lot of stuff coming out for
I would say unfortunately with 2020, a lot of the big stuff I was looking forward to kind of got pushed back. One being that we talked about her earlier with Candyman with Nia DaCosta. I was really looking forward to that. But as far as, literally tomorrow, Bly Manor comes out. I hope you guys check it out. It is a different tale than Hill House, not as horrifying or terrifying, but definitely a love story and has some horrific moments with the lady in the lake. But definitely that's something I hope people check out. The last couple weeks we got in small independent films. We talked about 12-Hour Shift, Brandon Cronenberg's Possessor, which is a great body psychological horror film, which I highly recommend you all check that out. Very thought-provoking sci-fi horror film. And then later this month on Hulu, we're getting Bad Hair, which I've heard a lot of great things from out of the film festival. And that's something growing up in the Black community, growing up with my mom and my grandmother hair, a Black woman's hair. I mean, women's hair in general, but, in the Black community where I grew up, you don't play with a Black woman's hair. And I love to kind of putting a twist on that. So that's something I'm looking forward to. And then just kind of looking at the calendar, I guess Witches, we were talking about like fun horror. That was something I grew up with back in the day. And, seeing Robert Zemeckis and Anne Hathaway on HBO Max, that would be fun. And I don't really think there's nothing else really that's going to be coming out. I guess we're getting Freaky with Vince Vaughn and the Body Switch. Yeah, seeing what they have with that. So hopefully we get some things to keep us busy with everything being delayed to next year.
What about you, Winnie? You're excited for Anna?
I mean, sadly, because of the pandemic, most of the horror films that I really wanted to check out got pushed back. It was obviously Nia DaCosta's Candyman, but we also got Saint Maud, which was directed by a woman. It also got pushed back. And what was the other film that?
I know we were supposed to get Antlers was one I was looking forward to.
Yeah, it was produced by Guillermo del Toro, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And Chris Rock's Spiral was another one on my list that I was excited for. Quiet Place 2. Don't get me crying on the stream of all the films that we get pushed back to 2021. It's very depressing.
And last year in Soho, it was supposed to be by the end of this year, but well, we're not getting it. Yeah, but definitely the ones that I'm definitely gonna check out is obviously Hill House, which just comes tomorrow, and You Just Remember Me, that Witches. I definitely loved the first one. It was really fun to watch. So I'm just gonna check that one out too.
Definitely. I'm definitely excited for Freaky. I also have been really excited for the Welcome to the Blumhouse films that with Amazon. I really liked Black Box. The Lie was
Kristen, let's be honest, The Lie was terrible. It was so bad. Man, I did not like that film.
So obvious.
Oh my goodness.
That the whole setup started. I was like, I think we all know where this is going. But Black Box I really liked, and I'm really interested to see Nocturne and Evil Eye. I've never seen an Indian American horror film, so I think that's going to be really, really cool to dive into. But so all right. Thank you guys so much for joining me. For those who are still here in the comments, now is the time that if we haven't already addressed your comment or question, throw them in now and we will get to them. I'm going to go all the way back up to the top, so don't worry if you've already commented something. And I want to thank you guys so much for joining me. You'll able to find out more information and links to Pop Culture Planet and our guests below. But if you want to follow Elliott and Anna Sofia, do you guys want to share where they can find you? Anna Sofia, you want to go first?
So you can find me on Instagram and Twitter as Anna_Sofia53. My blog is linked on my Twitter and my Instagram, and check out film posters. Check out some film posters on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and YouTube, where we do film reviews.
Awesome. What about you, Elliott?
Again, I'm so glad to be back, and hopefully can make another appearance. I love talking, whether it be horror or comic books with you. I love being on the show, so thank you for having me on again. But guys, check me out on YouTube. Again, talking about the latest movies, whether it be big movies, small movies, and everything in between. And then trying to talk about the hot new shows on television. Again, Lovecraft Country, The Boys, which we have the finale tomorrow of that. A couple new shows like Luca Guadagnino's We Are Who We Are. Jude Law's new show, The Third Day, on HBO, and just so many great things I love to talk about with you all on a weekly basis. So check me out on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter to get some of my latest movie insights on some of the delays of the films, or who's being cast in this role, or Doctor Strange being in Spider-Man 3. If you guys want to get my opinions on that stuff, follow me on those social media accounts.
But so great. Thank you so much. And if you're interested in following the podcast, you can follow me pretty much everywhere at Kmaldo, or the show at Pop Culture Planet Podcast on Instagram, or at Pop Cult Planet on Twitter. You can catch new episodes of the show every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. EST. And if you watch the live video version of Pop Culture Planet on my channel, youtube.com/Kmaldo, which you are on right now, you'll be able to join in on the conversation in real time and stick around for the Q&A at the end of the show that's not in the audio podcast. Episodes are available on all of your favorite podcast listening platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Consider subscribing so you know when a new one's posted. Rate and review this podcast and share it with your fellow pop culture lovers. Thanks for listening. It's been a blast, and talk to you next week. All right, so I'm going to go back a little bit and answer any comments or questions that have come in. And if you have any others, feel free to throw them in now. But we are going to start back up here with a recommendation from James saying Netflix's Slasher. Have you guys checked that out yet? I have not seen that.
I think it's in my watch list. I don't think I got a chance to check it out yet, but I've heard it was a pretty fun film.
It's okay film.
Is it a film, or is it a TV?
It might be. Yeah, let me look it up real quick.
I'm not sure. Let's see. Yeah,
it's a TV show. Yeah, it's 3 seasons.
I think it might be every season is like a new slasher story. Well, it's a Canadian anthology horror, so that's definitely something I would enjoy. So I have a love for all things Canadian. I don't really know why. I've never even been to Canada, but anthology.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check this out. It seems pretty cool.
Some other great Canadian horror anthologies, I believe, Creep show, right? Is that one that was out on Netflix? Is that what it was called? No,
I think you're right.
I don't think that's what it's called.
No.
Netflix
Creep show.
Creeped Out.
Okay, Creeped Out. Yeah.
But like, if you're like looking for like some chill, not really too scary, like Are You Afraid the Dark is Canadian, Creeped Out is Canadian.
Yeah.
And there's just like those fun like mini anthology like different episodes of little horror stories. I love that.
Yeah, those are fun. Yeah, I love a good horror TV show. Like I said, Lovecraft Country has been a lot of fun watching. We talked about it off camera, but earlier this year on HBO they had the Outsider by Stephen King, which touches on the lore of El Cuco, and that was a lot of fun this year. And it's besides Lovecraft, I'm trying to think, were there any other good like horror shows? I guess what we call Ratchet. I mean, it wasn't really horror, but it was like
I guess it's kind of horror.
Yeah.
Horror.
One that I think I can recommend is called it's an animated horror show called the Kirlian Frequency.
Ooh.
It's an Argentinian project.
Excuse me. Want to check it out.
And I'm just gonna read the synopsis because I saw it like a while back though. In the midnight hour, a lone DJ broadcasts the strangest and the scariest tales from outer edge of Kirlian, a lost city somewhere in Argentina.
Ooh.
Yes. And the animation is really one of the kind, and it's kind of spooky, and I love it.
Awesome. I'll definitely have to check that out. I love how like with streaming and stuff now, I feel like it does allow you to like find different projects from like all over the world that like you maybe wouldn't have had access to before. So yeah, that's really fun.
That actually reminds me of Ju-on, which was like The Grudge. Is the story of The Grudge, and it was dark, very dark. That's on Netflix, Ju-on. So it was called Ju-on, and it had a subtitle to it, but it was so good.
It was
highly recommend it. Very creepy.
It is, and it's very gory, and I feel that they should have a trigger warning. And
oh no!
Ju-on Origins, and Anna, I know you the episode with the baby.
Yeah,
that was so disgusting and just
because I was like, are they gonna do that?
Yes, and they did it.
Oh gosh!
Yeah.
That might be too much for me. The gore is a little too much sometimes.
Yeah, it's definitely gory. And I know we mentioned Buffy earlier. What was it? Warrior Nuns is kind of. It was a fun show. And I'm hopefully did they get greenlit for a season 2? Because it ended on a cliffhanger. Yeah, so that was kind of a throwback to Buffy with those characters and those nuns. I love those nuns, especially. I can't think of my favorite nun right now, but I loved Warrior Nun. That was a fun show for sure.
Yeah, I think it definitely had potential. I really think the lead actress, like, I don't know, I think she's a star. There was like that one scene where she was on the beach and she was just like laying in the sand, and I was like, wow, this girl, like, she's killing it. So we got another comment from James saying, this is in reference to all the films we were mentioning at the very beginning, that all great films like Cam deserved the world.
Mm-hmm.
And, also, he says, yes, Elliott, give them the world. We got another comment from XV and Richport that says, I love Jessica Lange, another great actress, and she does a lot of great horror projects as well.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And did any of you guys see The Babysitter? The sequel, the Scream, the Scream Queen or something like that.
No.
How was it?
I love the first Babysitter by McG that came out a couple years ago, but this one did not work for me on so many levels. I did not have a fun time with it. It didn't have any of the charm or the charisma of the first one, but definitely would recommend it. If you guys you didn't miss anything, I'll just say that. Speaking of, we talked about comedy horror. Did you guys watch Hubie Halloween yesterday?
Oh, I started it,
yeah.
And then it I felt like nothing was really happening for a while. So then I kind of turned it off and focused on eating dessert. So, but, did you like it?
You know, at this point in time, when it comes to Happy Production movies, I mean, it's been 15 years since they've been making just films that are just not that good. But I give kudos to Adam Sandler, just making movies that he has fun with. he has his friends, and they just, they're doing what they do best, or what they consider to do best. So it was an innocent, comedy kind of horror film, but it's definitely not, you're not breaking your neck to go watch it, because it's definitely not the best things you can do with your time. But I had fun for what it was. UB.
Totally.
I'm trying to see what else came out on Netflix recently or streaming. Did you guys like Antebellum?
I didn't watch it.
I haven't seen it.
I heard so many negative things that I was like, I don't really want to put myself through this.
You both made a great decision. I mean, and I know there's people that liked it, but I just thought it was kind of problematic, the way they use kind of slavery and mixing it in with like the story they were trying to tell. I just thought it in someone else's hands, like we talked about Jordan Peele or someone else, I think it could have been something special, but it was just kind of unnecessary.
Who directed that?
It was two directors, Christopher Rentz and I can't think of it. They're both first-time directors. Bush and Chris. So yeah, they're kind of newcomers, and you can kind of tell. I mean, the movie looked beautiful, but it was just the substance and lack of depth to me was the kind of the gaping holes in that film was just not that good.
Okay. Yeah. Did you guys check out what was Books of Blood?
I did.
What'd you think?
Did you say you saw it, Anna?
I haven't checked it out.
I'm not gonna lie, Kristen, I wasn't a fan. I thought that it was based on these Clive Barker, one of the most self-acclaimed, writers back in the 80s, and the stories they picked to me just didn't cohesively go together. And I just thought the first story, I will admit, with the girl, I thought that was pretty. I didn't see that coming. The twist they had there, but I thought collectively, that kind of came out of left field. And I think it's actually kind of based on a true story, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that was like the only one that kind of was okay. The medium one didn't really work for me, and then how they tied the third one into the first one with the guy, I was just like, this is kind of whack. But I thought it would have been better if it was like a TV show, honestly.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen a lot of people saying that, like maybe it would have been better as a TV show. And I think what they did was the Books of Blood concept of like that guy was like the main story that was like from the books, and then the rest were like Clive Barker had like different ideas of like what they could do, and they're not actually from the actual books. That he wrote, I believe.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But but I can appreciate what they were trying to do with like the interweaving of an anthology. Like I love when you see an anthology film and they actually do weave the stories together in a way where you're like, like that girl almost got hit by the car, and that's the guy that was driving the car, and and you're like, like that kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, that's cool. But I wouldn't say it was one of my favorites of the year. Let's see what else we got here. We got comment about New Mutants as a horror movie to discuss. What did you guys think? Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it, but I'm still curious as to why it got pushed back so many times.
New Mutants. I'm gonna see it eventually because I've seen all the other X-Men movies, especially from Fox. So I'm gonna probably, because I think it comes out in November on Blu-ray or something. I'll check it out then. It wasn't a film that I was rushing out to go see at the theater, especially during COVID. So I didn't see New Mutants quite yet, but I heard it wasn't what we were expecting for a 3-year delayed film, and kind of, I guess, disappointed some people. But I'll check it out when it comes out.
Yeah, I hear that. Another comment from XV and Richport. It says, all of our classics growing up were basically all white. Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, etc. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, as I've been thinking about this, like, episode today, and just in general, like the other episodes I have coming up around Halloween, I was just like, wow, like every movie that I'm going back to like watch now, or whatever, it's like, great stories, but like, all white people, and I didn't realize that growing up, like I never thought about that, I guess. But I think that just goes to show that like we as people can put ourselves in anybody's shoes, and so that like when people can't feel like they can't connect to a story, it's like, well, that's on you, because like we all have these human stories that we're telling, I mean, Halloween Town, Scream, what are some other classics? I don't know, Goosebumps. Like, I just feel like, all of these stories, like none of them feature really diverse casts at all, but I still loved them. So, I think that we can definitely do the opposite and have stories like, I hate to keep bringing it up, but Vampires versus the Bronx, because I feel like that's the only one I can think of that's like young people in this situation, like there's, with a mostly Latino and Black cast, I can't think of, very many other ones, other than the few that we mentioned today, like, Don't Look Under the Bed, but even that, it's like one person of color in the whole project, and they're sort of playing the monster in a way, you know?
Yeah, and that's why I love, again, this kind of new branch of up and coming directors or in the horror genre. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Misha Green does with her career moving forward after the success of Lovecraft Country, and see who else. What I would love to see Jordan Peele do is kind of what James Wan has done in his own kind of carving out his own universe with the Conjuring universe and all that stuff. And what he's done with that is taking people like, David F. Sandberg is now working with the DC universe with Shazam. And you have, people that worked with James Gunn in the past, Lee Whannell with Invisible Man or Upgrade. He has like his own universe that he's building. So I would love to see Jordan Peele use a Misha Green, a Nia DaCosta with Candyman, and kind of have them build their own brand and then kind of have people that they kind of mentor and tell us these stories in the future. So I'm hoping that that's kind of the case in this next branch of, this next generation of storytellers. So fingers crossed.
Absolutely. And, not even just like we're talking about horror today, it's October, but like even like Netflix's new Jingle Jangle movie, like I've never seen a Christmas movie led by people of color. Like do you guys know any? Like I can't really think of very many off the top of my head.
Not like a film like that. I mean, of course, there's like the This Christmases and all the, it's kind of Tyler Perry theme type of films, but nothing like that scale. Like we're seeing, it looks like it's a epic Christmas story and time travel. So I'm really excited to see what they have to do. Patricia Rashad is in it, and it looks like a great cast. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
I feel that in this upcoming horror throughout the years, we start to feel the Peele effect. In a sense that when Get Out came out, like people started to realize, hey, people actually want to see more of these kind of films, more of these social commentary, more of the psychological thrillers in this kind of sense. So that's why we're starting to see, I feel, more representation when it comes to horror.
Yeah, and I think that that's great, and I hope that we continue to see that, because I do think that there, I just recently read an article that was saying how like we're starting to see more diversity in television, but Latinos are still like the most underrepresented, and I'm like, where's our moment? I want our moment too, So I'm like, I hope that we'll continue, that we'll be able to get, everybody, like that. We'll be able to have all of these different stories. Like even I think I heard that for Lifetime or Hallmark, one of them is doing a Christmas movie that's focused on an Asian American family. This is the first time they're doing that. How crazy, but like how amazing. So, I hope that we get to continue to do things like that. And just make it normal, because this is what is everybody else's like normal lives,
100%. Yeah. And I think of even someone within kind of Robert Rodriguez. I think he's a great not up and coming. He's been doing it for years, but I think he's someone that kind of people branch off of, and whether he does the Machete or does like, the stuff he's working on, The Mandalorian season 2 is directing one of those. So I love what Robert Rodriguez has to do in kind of representing his community. So he's definitely someone that comes to mind, especially, like I said, with stories that take place in Mexico and things like that. So he's someone I really like too. Spy Kids,
never forget.
No doubt.
Of course.
Let's see what else. What other comments we have here? We have a recommendation from Adam Daly that says a new film called Save Yourself. Save Yourself is mostly a comedy, but being about the end of the world, has some jump frights in there, and has a mixed race couple that is so natural, and the two leads are fantastic.
Yeah, that film was awesome.
There's this other movie that's coming out. I can't remember the name right now. Maybe you guys remember. It's like two people that are like immigrating from another country, and then like the house that they get put in.
His house on Netflix. Yeah. Wumi Mushaku. Yeah. October 30th. I'm so excited for that. Good. Yeah. That looks really good, actually.
What else we got here? XV and Richport says it's funny because even within the Latinx community, there's stereotypes that we push forward. Do you think that's true? That like even outside of like, American culture, that even within the Latino culture, we're putting out stereotypes?
Yes, sadly, because I'm gonna give an example with our local TV stations. When they do comedy, it's mostly based on stereotypes within our community. So it's big. It's big here in a sense. So yes, I still feel that there are stereotypes within our community.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I mean, I think too. We talked about it earlier in regards to like the films when we were kids. We didn't really notice. Oh, this really doesn't have Latin people or Black people. We just kind of took it as it is. And I think even in the Black community, I think and again, he's made billions of dollars. Like Tyler Perry, he literally all his movies are complete stereotypes of Black people, whether it be the loud, obnoxious Black woman or a father that he's not with his kids. Like he plays on that. I have my feelings on Tyler Perry, the way he kind of uses the Black community and has those stereotypes. But at the same time, it is funny. I mean, there are things that are literally stereotypes of all cultures that can, when done correctly, can be tasteful in a sense and not be offensive and not being racist in a certain extent of the other way. So it is very interesting when you see your own people telling these stories and stereotypes at a sense, like I said, they poke fun at it, or that same time, like our generation before us, that's like how they saw us growing up, things of that nature. So it is that kind of familiarity in certain stories. It's like, well, that was kind of the times that I grew up in and this, that, and the other. So it is really interesting when you see people of your own race or ethnicity kind of tell stereotypes within their stories and how they toe that line of not being offensive, of being kind of authentic and poking fun at it. So it's a hard thing to do sometimes.
Yeah. But the reality is that it still sells.
It's a business, right? It's a business at the end of the day. 100%. Yeah.
And they cater for a specific kind of people that they will still go to the theater just to watch that specific film. Yeah.
I mean, again, like I said, Tyler Perry has made billions of dollars because he knows that there's not a lot of people so influential in the Hollywood industry like he is. So Black people go out to go see Madea Goes to Jail, Madea Halloween, or Boo, all that stuff, because they know that we don't really have that many people to go and support. So when he makes his films, we go support him, So, yeah.
Yeah. Now, we got another comment. Have we seen the trailer for Spell with Omari Hardwick? I don't think I've heard of this one. Have you guys seen this trailer?
I've heard of it, and I think it's going to be in the SCAD festival. It's going to show, but I still haven't seen the trailer. It definitely is a horror movie.
Yeah, I saw like snippets of it. I didn't really catch the whole thing, but yeah, I'll definitely check it out after this. Did you guys? Did you like the Craft, the Legacy? I think that tells us that.
I don't know. I just feel like I was hoping for it to have a little bit more like punch.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Original, there's a presence there,
Oh yeah.
And I don't know if I saw that in this. And also, I feel like sometimes it's like a missed opportunity. Like, they already talked about how they're having this diverse cast. They have transgender characters and all this stuff. But again, they're still relate to being like the side to this white girl. So I don't know. I think that they could have done something a bit different and, changed the story around a little bit, just, we don't need to see the same exact story again. We already saw that. Give me somebody different, leading this kind of production. I'm still going to check it out, I think.
Yeah.
Probably. You never know. Sometimes trailers are wrong, or sometimes they're, or sometimes they're amazing, and then the movie's not good.
And then the movie's complete opposite. Yeah.
Yes. I haven't seen the original one, but I kind of fear that it's gonna be the same one as Black, Christmas, the Christmas one that everybody hated.
Yeah.
That I feel it's gonna have the same
Black
vibe.
Christmas.
Black Christmas. I hope it does, and with the same product as that one, honestly.
Yeah, so I guess we'll see. It's hard to tell until the movie comes out, and then you're like, you can really judge. But speaking of trailers, they said the trailer of Books of Blood was one of those cases where the trailer was better than the movie. So
he might be on to something there. I actually didn't even really like that trailer for that, because I feel like the timing in the trailer was like so off-putting. Like whenever there was like supposed to be a jump scare, it was like the music cue like kind of came before the jump scare. So yeah, trailers are that's a whole nother podcast. Like an effective trailer and how you can sell a film and how trailers are supposed to be, give you a taste of what the film's supposed to be instead of for giving you all of the movie or giving you too much that you don't know what it's about. So that's a whole other conversation within itself, the effectiveness of a good trailer.
That is a great idea. Maybe season 2, I'll have you come back and we'll talk about that.
Sure.
But since we're talking about it, do you guys have a favorite trailer that you're just like, yo, that was a good trailer? If there was an award
within
for
within the horror realm or just in general?
Within anyone. Because I already got mine in my head.
Yeah. That's the ones that come to mind being a comic book fan wearing my Joker shirt was recently the Batman. I thought that trailer with Matt Reeves' Batman was like so incredible. And that was only like 20 or 30% of the film. That comes to mind. Batman versus Superman. I love that trailer that they cut for that. Infinity War and trailer was epic. Star Wars, The Force Awakens is one of the best trailers of all time and getting that feeling of Star Wars. So those are some that definitely kind of pop up. And I guess in the horror realm as well, Halloween 2018 trailer was pretty effective for me.
Yeah, one of my favorites is If I Stay, the movie with Chloe Grace Moretz. The movie wasn't good, but that trailer, oh my God, we would sit in my office and we would just be like, is it time to play the trailer again? And we would just play the trailer and listen to Say Something with Christina Aguilera and cry. We were like, this trailer's so good. And then we saw the movie and we were like, nah, it wasn't really that good. Yeah. But the trailer could have won awards.
One of the when I think of trailers and the experience, I think for me it was Midsummer because we were all in film class, and when the trailer popped out, every film, like all the students were like, "Put it in the big screen!" So we just like put it right there. We were like all amazed, like, "Oh my God, it's gonna be great!" The other trailer that really like wowed me was The Lighthouse, because I'm a big fan of Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, and the movie 5 stars.
Oh yeah, I love it. Why did you spill the beans?
Iconic.
I love it.
Go ahead.
Sorry. A trailer that is non-horror that I really liked the editing was the Wolf of Wall Street trailer.
Ooh, good one.
That was really fast-paced. I was like, okay, I'm kind of into it. And when Matthew McConaughey was just doing the thing.
I love that movie.
Yeah. Funny. So I'm going to throw in a couple of more comments real quick, and then we'll start wrapping up. The Batman. And vengeance. They like your answers, Elliott. We got a couple of film recommendations.
Oh, that's a classic.
People Under the Stairs. I don't know that one, so I don't know.
Oh, that is a classic. I definitely recommend that. It's like such a throwback, like Stephen King story of a people. I don't want to spoil it, but yes, definitely. I don't know if it's streaming. I think it's available on Hulu or something like that. But the People Under the Stairs like scared the heck out of me when I was a kid.
Oh wow. And then also Haunt on Shudder is a fun Halloween one. He said this person says.
Yes, Q. What's going on, Q?
Thank you for the recommendations, Q. Yeah, great. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this episode. I really appreciated all of your insight into the horror realm, and hopefully you guys will come and join me again soon.
No doubt. Happy Halloween to everyone out there. Stay safe. Wear your mask. Just like our favorite slashers, Jason and, Michael Myers. They wear masks. We can wear masks too. So wear your mask, guys. Stay safe out there.
That is great. Happy Halloween, everybody. All right. Bye.